What happened to us when we lied to ourselves? What exactly is happening to the world around us, and how the world is shaped when we project our own personal lies? When you think about it carefully, you have such an potential and such an predisposition on how to live your life. And it's hard because you always meet a resistance against your ideas, against your dreams. They always get tested by the reality of the outside. We all have broken dreams, and we all were disappointed many times with how our life turned out to be. And in some sense, lies are our defensive mechanism. Lies often help us to cope with the world around us and the world within us. Sometimes if things don't go your way, you try to lie your way out by justifying why whatever happens. I remember I studied locus of control, and people who lotus of control, or lotus. I think it's lotus of control because people who are more successful in life, they have internal locus of control, while people who aren't successful, they have external locus of control. What does it mean is, if you have internal locus of control, you attribute all failures to yourself. Whatever happens to you, it's your fault, and therefore you develop mentality that if it's my fault, I can correct it and I can push through and eventually can win. If you have external locus of control, you attribute everything bad that happens to you to the world of outside. It means you place everything, all your failures, beyond your control. And you think that it's the world's fault for all your personal failures. And people who have internal locus of control are more successful for obvious reason, because it doesn't matter if the entire world is against you, literally. If you have this mentality that everything is in my hands, your mental state will be much better. There was research done by people who were, for example, in Gulag, in Russian Gulag, this working camp during Stalin repressions. And people noticed, based on notes and observations, that religious people, they did better in the working camps than, for example, atheists. Because religious people who truly believe in God, they took responsibility for everything and accepted this misery as some sort of needful deed they must accomplish. It's the same like Viktor Frankl, for example, the way how he saw the world. When I read Viktor Frankl book, Man's Search for Meaning, one of the best books, I highly recommend. I read this book like 3 times. Viktor Frankl said about a boy in this book who was dying. And somebody asked him how he deal with this notion of his premature, about to be happen demise. And this boy said that a long time ago he watched a movie where a main character dies in an incredibly heroic way, and he was praying to God maybe one day he can die the same way. And what he did, he realized now that was his chance to die as a hero. What he did, he used this internal locus of control by internalizing his heroic idea of death And it's fascinating because he's just like, I think it was 10 or 14-year-old boy. And he already, with this internalized idea, was dying properly because there was it was disease or something. And that's the idea, because we use lies to defend ourselves. And usually I think people use lies the most who have external locus of control, because what they do, it doesn't matter what happened in their life, they always attribute fault to the world outside, to their neighbors, to their communities, to their country, to everything. While creating this internal lie that it can't be their fault. They're too perfect. They're too good. It's the world is bad. It's the people outside are bad, while they're so good. And they create this lie, this false narrative that makes them even worse because they never correct their behavior. When you have internal locus of control, you try to correct your behavior, because if you believe that whatever happens to you is on you, it's hard to survive if you begin lying to yourself about such things, because you can see through those lies. You refuse to be willfully blind. You want to know, okay, if it's my fault, I want to correct it. Even if it's not my fault, I still have to correct it because it's impossible to move forward. It doesn't matter what happened in your life. It doesn't matter if you died from such a disease. That's a good example that I said before about this boy who was dying, because even if there's horrible circumstances, if you internalize your tragedy in a proper way and try to rewrite narrative in the right way, you actually can live in any circumstances a decent life, because everything is here in your head, not outside. There's another interesting saying I remember I learned a long time ago, that two people were watching the world through the prison bars. One person saw stars, another person saw dirt. That's how we see the world. And I think the person who saw stars has this internal locus of control, while the person who saw dirt was under external locus of control. You have to be able to control your life. It's really great when you develop this idea that everything is in your hands. And even if it's not true, sometimes we can be struck by certain circumstances that are impossible to control and can suffer, and we can get disease and die. But then again, if you develop this mentality that everything belongs to you, that the whole world is yours, that you are in control of your own suffering, you can actually create narratives that would help you to overcome any tragedy in your life in a decent way. I think it's important to understand, because it doesn't matter how horribly you feel. If you know that, okay, I can do something about it, or for example, pain and suffering would make me better, would make me deeper, would help me to understand something. In every accident, it's kind of like an opportunity, an unexpected opportunity that would help me to make another step toward my goal. But for this, you have to have a goal. Otherwise, if you don't have a goal, everything seems pointless then. You're just hiding from everything. Because if you have a goal, every accident you can treat as a step toward this goal. Every pain and suffering you can treat as to make yourself deeper, to make yourself stronger, to make yourself more resilient to the pain from the outside. But for this, you have to have a goal. If you don't have a goal, it's like your dream and your goal is like a light, tiny sparkle of light that you can see from far, far away while you are wandering inside the darkness. That's why I always think that the best way to learn about somebody, ask this person about their dreams. If their dreams are incredibly trivial and shallow, I mean, there's nothing much interesting about this person. But if they have real dreams, strong dreams, they have little sparkle of light in them. It seems like they're going away from the darkness. Some people try to dissipate themselves inside this darkness, inside this ignorance, while other people, not many, but some, try to walk toward the light. That's very important. And with the lies, like for example, people who lost their dreams, they start creating lies around themselves. They try to speculate that the world is not a good place, the world is a horrible place, and people are horrible. And they create this lie, this false narrative about themselves and about the world. They try to adjust their weaknesses, their vices. As I already said before, that you have to be in control of your biology. Because if you're not in control of your biology, biology have control over you. And when you have internal locus of control, you, in some sense, in charge of your biological substrate. Because what you do, you direct all your desires, all your urges toward such a way how to accomplish your goal and how to accomplish your dream. And it's all about consistency. Because if you're not consistent in your pursuit of your goals, there's no way to do anything. Consistency is the key. Discipline is the key. And that's how you destroy your lies. Because in some sense, you can't be consistent with lies. You can't lie, because if you start lying in such a way, you always forget about your lies, because you lie so many times, and somehow it's really hard to keep the track of those lies. And eventually you will get so confused in your own lies that in the end you forgot who you are and stop recognizing people around yourself, because you lie so many times that your detection system in your brain get confused. Because what you do, you actually, like with each lie, you create another virus inside of your mind. And more viruses you have, like these little lies, the more corrupt your mind is. And the lie, it's like a virus, because it's keep replicating itself constantly. Like, for example, truth is not a virus because it doesn't replicate itself. Truth demands incredibly strong mental and intellectual work to be able to understand it. While lie, it's like a virus. You get one lie upon your software, this mind. You can imagine mind as a software, and you have one lie, then another lie. It's like a snowball, and a bunch of lies keep replicating, while you, first intentionally, then by inertia, creating this false narratives. And then eventually you don't know who you are. And then you try hiding from yourself, hiding from the truth, and hiding from your own responsibilities of being a man or a woman you always wanted to be. The more you live this way, the more you start hating the world of that side. You can see this tendency in people around, because I like when Jordan Peterson said, clean your own room. It's incredibly deep observation, because your room must be always clean. You have to see, like, people, if you want to know about the person, you can look at their car. If their car full of trash, it's not so good. Then you can look at their house or their apartment. Do they live clean or not? Because everything starts when fixing your own little life. Because if you're in charge of your own little life, if your bedroom is always clean, the bed is always made, you have no dirty dishes in your kitchen sink, and your car is clean, like there's no trash, it means you're in control of your little life. And if you're in control of your little life, it means you can actually change the life of outside slowly, or at least you're not gonna contribute to the life outside through some ideological ideas. And that's why it shows a lot about people, the way they live. And I think the truth matters the most. Without truth, nothing matters. And you have to develop this internal locus of control. This way you take responsibility, and if you keep blaming the guy you see in the mirror, you will try to improve this guy. Because, okay, what do I need to improve myself? What kind of tools I need to learn? What kind of tools I need to use? I need to learn to utilize. What kind of skills I have to learn to become better? You have to always ask yourself these questions, but you cannot ask these questions if you're filled with lies. That's why lies are incredibly dangerous. But if you start looking for the truth, then you're like, okay, what tools do I need? What skills do I need? What things I should change about myself? And you can only do this in a complete solitude, in silence, and through consistent behavior and through discipline. Because life, it's a journey. And to walk, you can imagine life like walking up the hill. And it's really hard to walk up the hill, but there's no other ways because you cannot just stop. Because if you stop, you start moving down, you start rolling down eventually. And rolling down is much more easier than, for example, go up. And you have to keep walking up. And the problem is, what happened to us, the more lies we accumulate, the harder our walk up is, because what you do with these lies is like a huge weight upon your shoulders. You have to carry those lies with you up, and you can't because it's too much weight in what you do, or you're rolling back with those lies, or you throw those lies away and start walking up. It doesn't matter how hard it is, because life's supposed to be hard. Life's not supposed to be comfortable. I don't know where we got this idea that life's supposed to be comfortable. Life's not supposed to be comfortable. Life's supposed to be hard. Life's supposed to be tough. That's the point. Because that's what meaning is. Meaning is in this hardship. Because if you don't have hardship, what's the point of your life? Everybody talking about AI will do everything for us and we don't have to do anything. Then what the hell are we supposed to do? How the hell are we supposed to exist? And that's what nobody understands, because that's why we're losing meaning. Look at the West. So many people so comfortable that they lost all meaning and dissipate themselves inside of their own lies. And they created this huge entertainment industry that gave them even more lies. Video games, pornography, movies, everything. Everything's turned into a lie, and everybody want to live inside of this lie. And I think in the end, everybody would create this simulation. It's going to dissipate themselves inside of this simulation that's not real in the first place. I don't know, we'll see. But for now, you have to fight with your comfort. Don't be comfortable. Don't pick the hardship and walk up the hill until you cannot walk no more. And even though you have to crawl until you cannot crawl. And then you still have to crawl because you cannot stop. You can't. While you're alive, don't stop. That's what I always tell myself. Don't stop. It doesn't matter what happens around you. Don't stop. Because if you stop, you start lying. And if you start lying to yourself, you get this weight up on your shoulder and you start rolling back down the hill. Don't stop. Be honest with yourself. The world is not so bad. But for this, you have to have internal locus of control.